This is the homework helper for Chapter 11, Section 4 in the 7th grade workbook, Theoretical Probability. So the directions for the top 6 questions are all the same. It's asking me to find the probability of each event, writing our answer as a fraction, as a decimal, and as a percent, and we're supposed to round to the nearest tenth of a percent should we need to round. So number 1 says we're going to randomly choose a white counter from a bag of 12 red, 12 white, 12 green, and 12 blue counters. So remember, probability is the number of winning scenarios. In this case, because they're talking about pulling a white counter, a winning scenario is pulling a white counter, compared to the total number of possibilities. So there's 12 white counters, and if we total it up, 12, 12, 12, and 12, makes 48 total counters. So the probability of getting the white counter is 12 out of 48. If you want to reduce that fraction, you can. You can reduce that fraction down to 1 over 4. Now remember, the directions say they also want you to write your answer as a decimal and as a percent. So we're going to go ahead and divide to write this as a decimal. 1 divided by 4, as you already know, is 0.25. And then when we're working with 0.25, we're going to scoop the decimal 2 times to the right and add a percent sign to change it into a percent, and that's 25%. Okay, number 2, tossing 2 fair coins and having one land on tails and one land on heads. So maybe we want to make ourselves a little tree diagram here to figure out how this could happen. So on coin 1, I can land on heads, or on coin 1, I can land on tails. Then when I flip the second coin, if I landed heads the first time, I could land on heads the second time, or tails the second time. If I land tails on coin 1, I could land heads on coin 2, or tails on coin 2. So the question says, what's the probability of getting one on tails and one on heads? So opposite sides of the coin. Well, as you can see, we've got heads, tails here, and we've got tails, heads here. So there's 2 ways this is going to work out of how many possibilities? Well, there's 4. Heads and heads, heads and tails and heads, and tails and tails. So there's a 2 out of 4 chance, or a 1 out of 2 chance fractionally, that I'm going to be able to do that. Now we're supposed to take and write that as a decimal and as a percent. So I'm going to go ahead and divide to write this as a decimal. 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. And then to change that to a percent, move the decimal 2 times to the right and add a percent for 50%. All right, let's look at one more. Number 3, rolling a number greater than 1 on a fair number cube. So obviously if we're talking about a dice, singular, here we'd be saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are my options. So I know I have 6 total options. Rolling a number greater than 1, well, that gives me 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. So 5 possible ways I can actually make that happen. So there's 5 winning scenarios and 6 total scenarios. That means I have a 5 out of 6 chance of rolling a number greater than 1 on a fair number cube. So now they want me to go ahead and change that to a decimal, so I'm going to divide. When I divide, 5 divided by 6 is going to change into 0.83 with 3 repeating. Since the directions said to round to the nearest tenth here, we're going to do that here when we change this to a percent. I'm going to go twice to the right and add a percent sign. That's going to change into 83.3%. If you want some exactness, you can go ahead and write it as 83.3 repeating percent. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple questions at the bottom of the page, number 7 and 8. A set of cards has 20 cards with stars, 10 with squares, and 15 with circles. Find the probability of each event when a card is chosen at random. So they're asking me to find the probability of picking a square. Well, there's 10 squares, so we know the top of my fraction is going to be a 10. And we're going to compare that to how many total cards there are. Well, there's 20 stars, 10 squares, and 15 circles. We're going to add that up, and that's going to give me 45. So there's a 10 out of 45 chance of pulling a square. What's the chance of pulling a circle? Well, it's still compared to the same total 45, but here now we know there's 15 circles. So that means there's a 15 out of 45 chance of getting a circle.